we'll get straight into this next session, a slightly different format, a panel. The chair is Graham Appleton, who writes a wonderful Wade a Tale blog, well worth following that one, and a distinguished panel to talk about action plans. We have, of course, just had the UK Curlew Action Plan launched about 2 weeks ago. So it's hot off the press, and that's the whole of the UK. Wales happens to have its own, but this is the first UK one. I'm going to shut up, Graham. Did you notice that size up? So Graham is going to chair this panel, and the big question is, do they work? And if they don't, what can we do to make them work better? Thanks, Graham.
Sorry, Mary, you were stealing my lines. So, as Mary says, do action plans work? Naively, I think that an action plan goes something like this. We notice there's a problem with a bird species. They red list it. They come up with an action plan. They give us money and we go and sort it. It doesn't work like that, but they'll explain how it really does work. We are all worried about curlew, and I don't think we're worried enough about curlew. If we go back to the Irish example, when Mary did her walk across the country and started in Ireland, there were 138 pairs of curlew in Ireland. 30 years previously, there were somewhere between 3,000 pairs and 12,000 pairs. That gives that 30-year period. Just take your own population 30 years on, and you realize why we need an action plan. The declining curlew in Ireland was the same as taking the population of Ireland and just getting rid of everybody who didn't live in Cork. That's what it was like. So we need action plans, and we've got 5 really good guests. The list is up there, so I won't repeat it, but Erik is the senior researcher for SOVAR, and he's going to give us a European perspective. Suzannah is senior, they're all senior something, senior species recovery officer for RSPB. Pat Lindley is senior ornithologist for Natural Resources Wales. Emmanuel Joyeux, I do apologise, is senior ecological advisor for the Government Office for Biodiversity in France. And Jenny Gill is professor of applied ornithology. It's ecology. It is ecology. I've written it. So she's also my wife. At the University of East Anglia. I'm going to start by posing a question to each of the panelists, providing a chance for them to sort of introduce themselves without giving a biography, because we've only got an hour. And so, without further ado, the question for Erik. You're looking at curlew conservation from a European perspective through AEWA. Could you explain how AEWA that provides a framework for your action, and does international cooperation empower you or frustrate you?
Thank you. Yeah, that's that's a number of questions in once. So all of you know AEWA and how it works. Some of you do, but most of you don't really. So maybe that's what I should start off with explaining that AEWA is an intergovernmental treaty which is signed by most countries in Europe, Africa, and Middle East, and some countries around it. And it's a legally binding treaty where countries are legally bound to protect especially the migratory species. About, I think, 255 species that are specifically mentioned that live in wetlands in these areas. And it's really about international conservation, and especially therefore relevant to species that are migratory, including, of course, the Eurasian Curlew. I myself am a coordinator of the International Working Group for Black-tailed Godwit, so I do a little bit less with curlews than with godwits, but it works more or less the same. And what it really does is it's on a government level, so it's on the national government level, and this is something that you should realize, I think, and it motivates the governments, the countries, to actually feel an urge to do something. And that is also how you can, I think, use these international single species plans to confront your argument with the actions that you think are needed. For all of the species that are, for a number of focal species, there's an international single species action plan written. This is a process that is performed by many of the countries, actually all relevant countries that are involved with the species, that have relevant population of the species, and is formally adopted. So every country that holds part of a relevant part of the population has formally said they are going to do their best to protect this species. And it's also something that they have to report on. They have to report on the progress. And in theory, nobody really likes to say after 3 years or even annually in some cases, we haven't actually done anything. So this is, I think, a kind of a good motivation to take action, and for you also to make clear to your government that what you do helps them to fulfill their commitments to the action plans. So maybe that's a very short introduction.
Thank you, Erik. We'll take questions later. I'm going on to Suzannah. So you've got the AEWA framework, and it's now coming down one level to the UK. So the RSPB already had a curlew action plan. So how does all this tie together for the UK?
Yeah, I think, so I'm going to say something which may upset Erik particularly, but I think we had the International Single Species Action Plan for curlew, which was came out of the AEWA agreement and signed up to by DEFRA and kind of published by the RSPB and DEFRA, and it hasn't built traction in the UK in the way that I think it was hoped it would. And I think the UK Species Action Plan, which was kind of came out as a deliverable from the Curlew Life project, so you had to do it, regardless of whether or not we thought it would do anything, and hopefully it will do something because of the way we've gone about it. When we started looking about how to actually develop that action plan, all credit to this side of me and the rest of the countries representing on this panel, we looked to that action plan that had been developed in Wales and had been developed in a very collaborative way and had brought people from across kind of spectrums of conservation, land management, game management together in the hope that actually, whilst we have that legally binding commitment at country level, it didn't have traction that was delivering on the ground. A lot of the work being delivered on the ground wasn't in reference, as I think has been represented here by people not knowing what the AEWA agreement is, was being developed separate to that. So I think for the UK Species Action Plan, we've got this kind of great action plan that is working in Wales because it's that kind of collaboration, but kind of building on that. So I actually think it's more building up from the Wales rather than building down from the AEWA one, because we've kind of taken the inspiration from there. And it gives us something that we can then, as a large kind of collaborative group, take to governments, both at a UK level and at a country level. So actually, here is a huge range of people. We have all agreed that these are the key actions we need for curlew, and this is where we need the funding, this is where we need the policy. And it's able to be much more specific from that kind of national government level, but have that support that comes from the kind of 4 UK countries as well.
Thank you. And that in some way acts as a nice introduction to Pat. Wales has had an action plan for a couple of years. It came out in 2021. But in fact, Wales recognised the curlew problem back in 2010 when the curlew went onto the red list. And they could see from their neighbours in Ireland that actually they weren't very far behind them, and that Wales has been leading the way within the UK. So can you talk about, please, how the action plan has helped people on the ground to deliver for curlew in Wales, or has it?
It's a really tough gig, that one, and it got even tougher. I mean, just to put this into context, I always think that the greatest threat to endangered species is the mantra that somebody else will say to them. And that's where we were with Curlew. Now, it was only when Mary came and did an amazing walk, she came to Wales and very bluntly said to a few individuals, what are you going to do for Curlew in Wales? I mean, crikey, I mean, how can we not take up the mantle and try and do what we can? So for me, I think we went away, we had a conference, we asked all the people in that room, which there were 150 people, and we had to turn people away because we couldn't accommodate them. And the first thing they said they wanted to do is they needed a form of collaborative working, and they wanted us to form a working group. And then from that, they challenged that working group to write a plan of which would have tangible benefits and gains for Curlew. Now, I've long in the tooth, and I've been around a little bit of time, and I've gone through all those action plans, particularly in the UK BAT process. And a lot of those plans were just shelved. They became redundant very, very quickly. So having the kind of the looming shadow of Mary, I was thinking, right, we can't let this go. We were horribly wrong. So in order to answer your question, Wales was the first UK country to develop a plan. We had a high level ministerial lodge in 2021, which is fantastic. It was then right on the political radar. You know, we had the minister doing the launch live, and my CEO and the Senate Kid champion Mark Isherwood to write the forwards. But more importantly, in terms of how you use that plan to actually galvanize support and action is the operative word here. That plan had to set the strategic direction for Curlew recovery, no doubt. It's easy to say that when you're writing it. It's a lot harder to actually do it. So I'm not the doer. In collaboration with us, we wrote the plan and we set out what we think needed to be done. And I think for anybody who's now thinking about how you can exercise that is you've got to have a very clear narrative. You need to know the why, the when, the how, the what, and that has to be articulated within that plan. So plan was launched. It was a great effort from a small group of individuals to get that plan into some sort of fit for purpose condition. And I think other areas which were really instrumental in terms of the take up and the significance of that plan was when we developed the concept of important Curlew areas. And so we created a network, and that network, depending, what you look at, can potentially hold between 30 to 50% of the Welsh population is within that network. That network had to be politically live enough to be embedded within policy. So it's now very much recognised within Welsh Government policy, it's recognised within NRW policy, it's recognised within the planning policy. It's not quite there yet. There's still some rough edges what need to be ironed out a little bit, but it's there in policy, it's there. So I think for me, once you've got that sort of almost that kind of high level, intelligent, realistic ask of what you want to do, and you can articulate what you want to do, then you then have to pass it on to others to execute. For me, there's some really tough actions within that plan. Some tough actions not only for my organisation, NRW, tough actions for Welsh Government, but also actions for other organisations what sit on Cymru, Curlew, Wales, which is the oversighting body who actually take control of that plan, and they're responsible, they're accountable. But the key thing here is there was no mandate from government to do that. It's purely a group of individuals wanting to try do it and to try and make whatever we can do on the ground effective. So I think it has started to work because we've got the ICA network. Curlew is very much on the political radar. We've had 6 ministerial roundtable meetings on curlew alone in Wales. That is absolutely unheard of in any single species recovery. So massive amounts of traction. It also helps because we've now got dedicated recovery projects, which is funded by Welsh Government. And we've got 2 existing £1 million 3-year projects and another 2 potentially under consideration, which may be implemented this year. So when you think about, has that plan delivered what we wanted it to do, I would definitely say yes. Has it started to create a population level response per curlew? Not yet. But at least we got a fighting chance. I'll leave it at that one.
Thank you very much indeed. So the Welsh situation, Wales is the right size for curlew. The problem with curlew in England in particular, well, in Scotland the problem is there's still too many of them and people haven't got that worry yet. If that's fair. How many people are here from Scotland? You see? In England, the problem is they're in strange places and all disparate and it all doesn't work quite together. But Wales is great and Wales can set us some examples. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask Emmanuel to talk to us. He's going to talk about French action planning, which he's working on at the moment. He has a very tricky remit because he's trying to develop an action plan in a country where there is a strong hunting lobby. Tracking has illustrated that everybody in this country is affected by what happens in France. And therefore, I think I'm interested to hear what he's got to say. Good luck.
It's a difficult job. What can I say about curlew in France? First, you have to know there is 1,000 pair in France during the breeding season. And in winter, we can count around 30,000 birds. It's the fact. Today, there is a moratorium of hunting in France that is renewal every year. It depends of AEWA decision, of course. So now I cannot predict what happen next year. Every years we submit to the ministries scientific facts about situation of the curlew in France and in Europe too. So there is a first action for curlew in France between 2015 and 2020 with a first management plan. This first plan was led by the hunters of Normandy. It is not really a success because there is no money to develop the action of this plan. So the Ministry of Ecology decided to ask to the Tour du Vala and the French Agency for Biodiversity to write a new plan concerning 5 middle waters. Eurasian Curlew, of course, red shank, common stye, black-tailed gallwit, and northern lapwings. Fine, it's good. So now this document was completed, and I hope it can be finalized. Good. At the end of February. I hope. What say this plan? So we try with different stakeholders to define more objective. The first was to stabilize the breeding population of Eurasian Curlew in France. Of course, it's the main. The second one was to preserve and increase the area of agriculture, the breaston, that is functional for all these waters. The third objective was to preserve, restore, and increase the area of natural habitats suitable for whales. The other one is to contribute to good conditions for waders during migration and wintering periods. We did try to integrate Europe or use too. It's important. And the last one is to understand the population dynamic and the factors influencing their productivity. It's not a surprise for you, I think. And we try to traduce this objective in action. So there is 10 actions. The first one concerns the agriculture policy, of course. It depends on the European Common Policy, and to try to mobilize and develop a tool for conserve grassland, for example. The second action concerns the extensive farming, promote regional projects in favor of extensive livestock farming in wetland and grassland waters. The third action concerns the habitats. It's important to reclaim, restore, and secure areas favorable to breeding waders, throat and land or pressure control. The action number 4 concerns the level of the water. Of course, in an area we cannot manage this water. Let's say in another area, yes, but it's important to convince the manager of water to develop action about this management. It's not action number 5. It's a big subject. It concerns for reason, of course, to set up participatory action or research on how to reduce the impact of population during breeding season. It's not easy in France. There is some people who doesn't want to control predator because they can consider that it's not natural. It's a choice. And in the other end, you have other people who want to kill all the predators. So it's not surely a good situation to develop action on time. The action number 6 concerns the local management plans and to integrate grassland waters into a land use planning project and program and natural area management plan. For example, the Natura 2000 projects in France. Action number 7 concerns the disturbance in winter side, for example, to control shell fishery, for example, to control hunting activity, to control walking with your dog in the sand, many things. Action number 8 concerns the hunting activity. It's not the action plan who can decide if we must continue the hunting activity for lapwing, for black wake or other one. But it's important to have a link between hunters and manager and researcher to understand what is the situation of all these waters. We must have a dialogue with all the stakeholders. And the action number 9 and number 10 concern the research and the monitoring. Of course, that is the reason I was here. I am here to understand how to do and to improve all this monitoring. Now, what can I say? I hope many things. I hope that this plan will be approved quickly because it's important for us. It's important for manager to have a document to help to develop some conservation action for Eurasian Curlew. If we have not that, we cannot find funding for European funding, for example, to develop action. It's important to have a leader to help us, scientific, manager, farmer, to develop all the action in all the country and France. And the third one, of course, it's important to have money. And now I cannot say to you what's happened. I think this plan will be approved, I hope. And after, I'm not a ministry. It depends of the money that France can make in these projects. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
So, there we have it. We have different stories there, and people have said something from the platform. But it's now your turn. In a previous existence, I was the deputy headmaster, so please try not to catch my eye. I'd like to know what questions you've got for the panelists. How can the panelists and the organisations that they represent provide you with more? I've just done that awful thing. I forgot my wife.
Yeah.
So. Sorry, the last bit of the puzzle is how we get the data from you to end up in the action plans. And the question for Jen is just how does that happen? How do you develop the action plans, and how does the action plans impact on you, and then how do we measure the differences? Jen?
I thought you were seamlessly adjusting timing. That perfect here already. I think it's the science behind all of this is incredibly important, right? I'm really struck listening to all of this, how important it is that we're in a position to write action plans, right? This can be done because we know important things. We know the state of these populations. We have really good information on numbers in different seasons. As Maya just said, we know the breeding numbers, we know the wintering numbers, we know how they move around. We can interpret that to understand what the problem is. But beyond that, we can really get down to what the problem is. We can write action plans that are real, that really say what sorts of things are needed, because we know where the problems are and what some of the causes of those problems can be. And we know that because of people like you. And I'm struck sitting here thinking about all of the many bird species out there for which we don't have this information. I mentioned yesterday that the curlew was just one of many other birds that were in decline. And if there's figures of, I think that we've lost, is it 1 billion birds in North America in the last 30 years? 600 million in Europe. Huge declines in lots and lots of species. And I think we're actually maybe in a bit of a privileged position of knowing what we might be able to do about species like curlew and other waders, because we've got people like yourselves in the room prepared to spend their time contributing that information, gathering and contributing to that knowledge base so we can do something about it. So I end up sitting here actually feeling quite hopeful about being in the privileged position of being able to create those action plans and face the challenge of delivery, which is surely the next stage. But better that than having no clue, other than there don't seem to be as many as there used to be. We're in a much better position than that. And that's down to the collective efforts of everybody. And then I think moving forward from that, with delivering these action plans, Emmanuel mentions number 9 on their monitoring. It's going to be crucial, right? The way we're going to help other species, we can't do this for every single species out there. But if we learn from what we do with the species we are in a good place to do something about, we'll know how to move forward with everything else. And we're only going to do that if we monitor and understand the consequences of the actions that we carry out. So I think the role of citizen science in all of this is absolutely crucial in creating the thing in the first place, and then helping us to design the actions that are likely to be appropriate, and then understand the consequences of delivering them. So, over to everybody here.
Thanks. So, on the assumption that you haven't all read the action plans, I've done a short summary of the UK one. It's really short, and the action plan itself is remarkably brief. It's lovely. It's really good. Take number 1. We need a curlew recovery task force, and the only representative we have in the room, I think, is you, but that will be meeting very shortly, and we'll hope to get things in moving. The number 2 says we need a network of effectively managed areas resourced for habitat and predator management. That's 2 things there. One, we've got the areas like Wales has already got, and then resourced for habitat and predator management to me means provide us all with fences and other stuff. Hopefully. Number 3, well-designed, adaptive, effective, and enduring land management schemes. I don't know what that means.
So that's around agri-environment schemes.
Okay.
Different names of different countries. Yes.
Agri-environment schemes in the right places. Yep. Number 4, there's the woodland issue. Now, if you look, you'll find that the BTO has already done a sort of where are the curlew and other waders and where shouldn't we put forestry. But at the moment, that's just where they are, not where they're actually producing chicks. And it's the producing chicks places we need to protect. So that's going to be important. Number 5 is collaboration. Well, that's it. To understand why there are so many generalist predators and how to deal with the drivers. Does that mean money to sort out the pheasant release issue? I won't go into that. Number 6 says find funding for evidence-based monitoring, adaptive management, innovative techniques and research. That means, Mary, that looks like we're going to be funded nicely in the future. So that's the summary. They've got a panel of people here. Do we have some questions and points you'd like to make? Action plans are rubbish. Where's the money? What do you want to ask? Yes, from Belgium. Belgium goes
From Belgium, yes. We have a lot of curlews breeding in intensive farmland. Agricultural schemes, the agro-environmental scheme, they are voluntarily, so you can't put them necessarily where the curlews are. So how does what does a species action plan need for curlews in farmlands to turn their prospects? What is needed? Because we have a species action plan in Belgium. I was talking to Pat about it earlier, but we don't seem to make difference for the curlews. And you spend all this money, but you don't make difference on the terrain. It's just going nowhere, it seems. So you're turning in circles. We know what they need, but how do we put it into place in the farmland?
It's a really good question. Pat, are you going to answer that, or is that Suzannah?
Probably a mix of both, really. I mean, we're now in the process of having a kind of complete rethink in Wales post-Brexit about, our land management practices. We don't refer to them as agri-environment schemes. So we've got something now coming online and has been launched called the Sustainable Farming Scheme, and that is built up in several layers. So the timing is absolutely right now. Government are working at pace in order to do this. So from a Gill Vineyard Cymru perspective, underpinned by the action plan, because there are key actions in there which link to agriculture, and certainly design of policy, is we've got a very clear task and finish group, what Bethan sits on and steers, and that feeds directly into Welsh Government in order to develop that agri-environment scheme, sustainable farming scheme in our case. So, but in order to get to that stage first, you've got to get that species on the political radar. If you're not even there, then nobody will listen to you. So the fact is that we've got the plan, it's clearly signposted to key actions and owners and deliverers. Then you can have your ministerial conversations. Then it opens the door for you to take it further. Otherwise, you're always knocking on a door where nobody's going to answer you. So now we've got that door open. We've got a really tight task and finish group what feeds into that. So from a Welsh perspective, we've got a really good opportunity. Now, if we fail, then the fortunes of curlews could be potentially quite bleak, because we've got to be quite open and honest here. The amount of money required, not just the curlew, but for nature, is absolutely staggering. And public money alone is not going to fill that hole. So, but what you do have is you've got an ability for a widespread, wide geographical scheme to actually do some real tangible benefit and gains. And it comes back to what Jenny was saying about we're in a fortunate position because we've got a lot of the evidence base. We think we know what to do, and we think we know where to do it and how to do it. And that's then just about being transposed into a fit-for-purpose scheme like sustainable farming. Does that help answer your...
So the second half of the question is really sort of what happens if it doesn't work in this area?
Can I come in on that? Because I think that the UK Action Plan kind of tries to get at this, because I think there are two things you need with agri-environment schemes. One, you need the right things in those agri-environment schemes that we know work, and they're in development at different stages across the UK, and the different agri-environment schemes in each of the UK countries. But one of the things that we put into the action plan that we think is critical is it's all very well having farmers who are very nature focused and are interested in, and these are, you invite yourself into these schemes. It's not that, you need to be doing this. It's largely farmers who have access to advice or who are otherwise interested in nature that are going to go to these schemes, because there's a hell of a lot of paperwork. It's a great big faff. What you actually need to make this landscape scale across these countries is to have localized people who are experts in their area who can help farmers in their area to access these schemes. So we're talking about local farmer advisors, whether they're part of organizations like the RSPB or the Wildlife Trust, whether they're independent, part of a government scheme, part of a consultancy, doesn't matter, but they'll need to be localized initially at the farm gate so they can develop that relationship with the farmer. And then whatever is in those schemes and then be effective because they've been put in place in the right areas. And I think that's a really critical part that is actually missing for a lot of where we're discussing agri-environment scheming more generally.
Thank you. You can chat further on that, I'm sure. Another question, please. Yes, sorry, you are?
Owen Murphy, I'm from Ireland, and I'm just interested in, I suppose, the Welsh thing in particular that you mentioned, starting in 2021, a lot of political goodwill behind you. And I think the danger, or certainly what I've seen in the past, is that when things are launched and when people are talking about action, the politicians are around, they're on the media, projects get some funding. Well, in the meantime, other arms of government or other departments continue unabated, or if they do change, their token changes. Afforestation policies continue, or land drainage for intensification of agriculture, or tourism tells people to go to these places. And we talk about whole of government, all of society approaches that are very easy to say but very hard to implement. And the other part of it is that governments tend to, when there's a good news story from nature or biodiversity, they publicize it. But when data is showing things that are more awkward for them and they don't like to stomach it, they ignore it. They ignore the robust data when they don't like it. They use it when they do like it. So I'm just wondering, from a Welsh point of view, I know that since 2021, say, humane cable restraints have been made illegal, or snares, which is a really, really important tool in a toolbox for somebody who's trying to manage predation. And I'm assuming that your action plan lists predation as one of the big issues. So I'm just wondering, are government really listening? Or how do these things, you get government buy-in to an action plan that says predation is such a big problem, and yet other things happen in the background, such as humane cable restraints are taken out, taken off the table. So just your sense of, is the buy-in real? Are they actually listening?
It's really a great question. That's quite tough because I'm the regulator. I work for NRDB. We cannot lobby government change. We can influence and we can advise, and that can be presented by options and advice to government and for consideration. Now, where I would say is we thought about this really long and hard, not about the method of predator control, but the need. And as far as I'm aware, nowhere in the UK yet there was a position statement on need for predator control. So Gill Cymru, we talked about this. We had a little group and a little chat, as you do, to keep it streamlined, keep it focused. And we thought, if we think predator control is a intervention, what needs to happen in order to try and increase overall breeding success, then we need to articulate that message not only to decision makers, but to the public. So Gill Cymru, we sat down, we wrote a statement, we brought in experts, some are in this room, Andy's at the top there, he was very influential, and we produced a statement outlining why we need to do predator control, because it's very multi, it's very challenging, it's complex, and it divides opinion in whoever you talk to. But what we didn't do, and we did this purposely, is we didn't go down the method, because on Gill Cymru, it's across multi-sectoral organisations, and we thought there would be strength in collaboration and numbers having a position statement what all could sign up to, without trying to get some mixed messaging where some of the members would have to backtrack because it didn't sit firmly within their own policies. So I think it was right that we adopted that approach. From an NRW perspective, I can't go forward and influence government in relation to their thinking about the method of control. But what I can do is say that the need for the control is important for these reasons. I'm sorry I've not really gone there, but that's probably sounds a bit more like a politician's answer. But
Can I put a question to you, because it's something I've been really interested in, because you're further down the line than anybody here, and your number of curlew, the last time I saw, had gone down to 105 pairs in 2021 from 138. How are you keeping government buy-in when the curlews are not being saved? Because we all have that problem. How do you keep landowner buy-in when they're seeing their curlew chicks taken by predators? How do you keep government on board when things are going wrong?
Yeah, it's certainly tough. I think maybe when you get to the stage that you're at that critical stage that you're looking at extirpation of the species. I don't fully understand what the repercussions for Ireland would be from the EU if you start losing native species. But I'm certain that there would be some repercussions to it. So I mean, we're sort of at the end game now insofar as these birds are either savable or they're not savable. And so I think, the breeding waders EAP, which has curlew bundled in with 9 other wader species, is probably, for a certain couple of species, curlew and Dunlin in particular, is maybe last throw of the dice. But I mean, there has been previous efforts, both the Curlew Conservation Programme and a breeding curlew EAP, that have probably stabilised the decline to some extent. I know, forecasting from or predictions from a number of years ago would have had them at a lower level than they are now. But it is hard. It is hard to mobilise, especially when you're against other things that are lobbying that are more economic. But I mean, we're all up against that same issue. But I think I suppose we have our standing insofar as that we're about to lose these birds probably gives us some leverage to say, well, we can't just ignore them now, even though there is only 100 pairs from 7,000 or 8,000. We really need to get behind them. So it's tough, but I mean, we're funded for the time being. But these projects it's what we're looking at now is how do we mainstream them, because we're cyclical. We're 5-year projects or 6-year, 7-year projects, and by the time they get going and then they're up, they're a couple of years and then they start winding down again, and there's the uncertainty, what's coming next, where are we getting the next funding from? So it's difficult.
Thank you very much. Another question. Yes, you are?
Hi, Ian Slater on board with Castle Estate. Just to carry on from what I was saying there, and you sort of the breeding season wrap up through the CRP. You look at the shining lights from the breeding success there. Is the Glenmurray project in Ireland. So those curlews from 2006 were extinct in Northern Ireland, and have come from there 2006 to the present day to 52 pairs. And the success of that project is down to like grouse moor style management been translocated to that area, and one of the main sort of sources of success there with the large numbers of foxes and predators they have is through the snare of foxes, and big numbers of 200 foxes a year and over 100 are snared. So it really shows that management in those areas can work. And with the Welsh sort of banning the hitch, humane cable restraints, I think it is taking away tools on the ground, like you said, having resources for the guys on the ground. And you mentioned fencing, but these are big wild areas, and the curlews do better in the big wild areas. You can't fence those nests out there, but it's having the tools for the guys on the ground. And we know what the successes are, and that's a shining light that shows us that can work. With no pheasant release there neither. There's a big abundance of foxes, and that is a major tool. And to be used rightly, where GWCT have endorsed that the humane cable restraint, and it is a major tool. Northern part of Wales, there's some upland strongholds there for some key species, and they've had a tool taken away from them, and it's affected them on the ground. So,
Thank you.
Could I just kind of come back on Gleyheeg? Because there are a few things there that I think if Katie Gibb was sitting here and not back in New Zealand, she'd just want to kind of clarify. Gleyheeg, I think, is often a shining light that we kind of bring forward as thing like, we can do this, we can bring curlew back from the brink. I think that changing parts of Gleyheeg, one, we've had consistency in Gleyheeg for 20 years of people working there and working closely with farmers to manage their land for curlew. Predator control has been a really key part of it, but certainly for the period of time that the Life Project was working there, where you've seen that uptake, that wasn't snares, that was shooting the foxes. So I do want to kind of correct that. And Katie, last time she presented on Gleyheeg, was very clear that she saw the combination of nest fencing and reefal predator control was what got the success there. The nest fencing is absolutely critical for hatching success, and the ongoing predator control, particularly of foxes, but also of crows, was critical for the fledged success. So I just wanted to kind of make that point, that that's where that's...
I think you should have dinner together. Another question, please. I think we've probably got a chance for a couple more questions. Sorry.
David Gardner from the Melbourne Communities, the Melbourne Curlew Project in Northwest Cumbria. I understand the importance of the action plans focusing on ICAs in Wales, WIs in the UK. Is there a danger that by doing that, other important areas for curlews get left out, get fall behind, that they don't get the highlighted resources? Or is that a necessary evil to focusing on areas where work can make a difference?
Thank you. That's a tricky one. I'll come back for the other question in a second. Where do we start with that one? So where do we put the money? Where do we put the assets? Do we give up on some areas?
It's really tough question, because again, any action plan or any conservation manager has to have realism in their thinking. And at the moment of time, currently, there just isn't sufficient money unless you have a widespread land management scheme to actually do what you want to do for curlew in this case. So the ICAs is not the end point. Curlew recovery areas is not the end point. It's not saying this is where you need to target all your agri-environment scheme. It's a place where if you've got almost finite or you're constrained by resources, it's a way you do to target your money to get your best return. So that was the rationale we adopted in Wales. You know, money's tight. We wanted to focus, but did it mean that anybody who's outside an IC doesn't get the finances? That's not what it's designed for. It's purely designed to get this thing moving, start to turn the tanker, and start to think about, right, can we focus on these key areas, which are still quite relatively good densities in some sites, but then consider, because what you didn't mention is a loss of range. So if you've only focused on your co-sacs and forget the rest, then your range starts to contract, which is equal just as perilous. So I do share your frustration, but I'm looking at it from a bit of a realism rather than an optimist.
And there's your dinner date.
Yes. Yeah, just one point. It's always fascinating to listen to actual plans. I'll just give you one example. If you go back in 2000, every local authority in the country was asked to provide a biodiversity action plan for their key species. Now, I'm in Devon currently. I was then, and we've had curlew action plan produced then 20 years ago, and we had more curlew with all the NGOs, all the RSD, everybody behind it. 20 years on, that failed. It sort of, which the local government changes and everything changed. I'd really like to congratulate the UK Action Plan. That is a superb document. And what I really like about it, there are 2 target dates, 2028, 2030. We will have a change of government in 2030. But if we don't hit those targets and have a benchmark, 28, to make some progress, we would be in a position to review it in these next 2 years, those next 2 years. What I'm saying is you need a timeline to benchmark your action plan in terms of failure or success. So 2 years' time, if we are still in the same position, I think that timeline is a real focus to sit alongside the action plan.
At that fun and I was looking at the wrong clock. I was looking at the clock on the not the real clock. So I do have time just to ask, is there anything you want to say, ladies and gentlemen, to assure people it's all going to be okay? In terms of timeline and delivery, Erik, what is the deliverable, and how do we stop governments backtracking?
That's also a really difficult question. No, I think you asked me if there are any frustrations regarding this process, this intergovernmental process, and I think one of the Achilles heels is that an action plan is only as strong as how willing the individual governments, the countries are to implement it and to support the implementation. And another thing is that this AEWA process it's a very bureaucratic process. It's all negotiating and very diplomatic, and it takes a very long time, and everyone has to agree. So that's I think a weakness, and that's also why there are no very clear dates set, for example, for delivery. But I think each action plan should have an international working group, which is coordinated by someone. And within this working group, it is you're able to set these moments, and so it really depends on the coordination there as well. So that's really important.
Thank you.
I'm glad to say that the Curlew working group now has, hopefully for a longer time, a new coordinator who couldn't make it, but there's I hope a new energy in this working group again.
Good. So energy at the top, energy certainly of these tables. So let's translate the energy into a bit of deliverables, please. So you know who these guys are. You have another day to collar them, talk to them, buy them a drink, if that is such a thing you can do, try and bend their ears and get them to do what you want to do on the ground. Thank you very much indeed to all 5 of you. And we're finishing on time. Thank you.
Before you read your seats, do you mind if I ask one first? I know I'm hugging, I'm sorry. But if not often you get, particularly the European delegates in the room, when you look out over this room and you see the number of volunteers and projects and energy, does that translate to your experience in your countries, or are you working from a very different template? the citizen science that Jen has said is so important. Do you have that in different European countries? Erik. Sorry, Emmanuel.
At the end of on this month, there will be the first meeting with all the partners who work on curlew topics. It's the first time, and for me, it's the first step. It's really important, but we don't have many volunteers. It's clear. It's mentality. It's true, but I think at the end of this month, we can develop this section. Of course, not in France, but in some country, we can try to see farmers, to see volunteers, find volunteers, to develop another actions like pedagogy, try another thing like agri-urban scheme in countries. And in 1 month, I must translate Eurasian in this meeting to show what the English people do in this country. It can be an example, it can suggest idea. It's important for you for that.
Thank you. That worked out as a good question.
British people, not just English.
British people, so
Right, thank you very much. And we now turn to predators.